While I was there, one of the things that God really said to me, not in an audible way, but in a still and quiet moment, Barrie, I want you to be present, to sit in my presence, to not distract, and don't be distracted.
Welcome to the Crucible Project Podcast. The Crucible Project is a nonprofit organization committed to creating a world of men and women who live with integrity, grace, and courage, helping them to fulfill their God-given purpose. This podcast will discuss important and sometimes difficult topics while delivering practical life applications with men and women who are currently practicing this work. We are igniting Christ-like change in men and women through experiences of radical honesty and grace.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Crucible Project Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Jess Donovan, and today I get to interview my friend, Barrie Daigneault. So with that, Barrie, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Woohoo! Glad to be here with you, Jess, and to represent the Crucible experience. Share
Come
it in whatever way
on.
you want me to.
So I know Barrie personally, but for those of you who don't know you, share a little bit about who you are, where you're at right now in life.
Sure. I am a sister in the Crucible. I did my experience on the weekend in August of 2021. It has been such a blessing to my marriage, to my relationship with my husband and children, and personally and professionally. I am a therapist in Manchester and super grateful for the support that I have personally and professionally from those who are involved in Crucible.
Awesome. Yeah. And man, so many good pieces there. So both your own work in Crucible, what you've gotten to do, as well as being a therapist. And there are lots of ties between Crucible and the whole, I feel, therapist work that you guys do. So how did you hear about Crucible?
I don't remember offhand. I think God eventually whispered it into my ear and basically said, girl, you're going. There were some people at the church. I think my pastor, Matt Furr, may have begun chatting about it. My husband actually went in October 2 years ago,
Okay.
and
Wow.
he caught the bug. And eventually I got bit and procrastinated procrastinated for a bit, and life got in the way a little bit. Then God made it clear that I was to go in August of 21.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what was it that stuck out in your husband to you that gave you a little glimpse of like, I think this could be something for me?
Yeah. I saw him coming alive emotionally and relationally, and beginning to take more and more risks in how he was just stepping into his personhood as a leader, as a husband, a father, a friend.
Wow.
Saw a desire in him to just want to embrace the identity that God had for him and to let go of one that was not really, it was counterfeit.
That is so cool. And so what was it in you that said, man, I think I need this weekend?
I knew that I needed to go. I had some pretty heavy duty work to do around grief. In the 6 months to a year prior to going, I had lost my mom.
Wow.
Yes, in 2019, and then 6 months later, my younger brother David died tragically and suddenly, and it rocked my world as well as family and loved ones. And I knew that there was more work to do beyond just the grief of my brother and my mom. That there was probably some decades of hurt that I needed to unbury, bring to the table, and look at. And by the time I got there, God had prepared me, and I had that experience.
Now, I'm sure it's got to be quite the heavy load to balance your own grief as well as that of clients and that of people that you're caring for. What does that balance look like for you? Like, how do you tend to your own mental health while tending to others?
Yeah, it's definitely a balance and a challenge. It's not always balanced. I work hard as much as I'm able to leave the work per se at the office. I've been doing therapy work now for over 25 years, so I have some practice in that. It always hasn't looked pretty, but at the end of the day, I turn it over to God again and let him have his way. And then I move into my pathology and my work and my relationships and really attempt to connect the best I can with my family and loved ones as well.
Now, as you went on your weekend, what were you getting out of it? Like what came up for you? Was there anything
Sure.
unexpected?
Oh, there was a lot that came up. I I did not go there to make friends. I did not go there to make connections. I went there to put a box around me. I went all the way to Chicago to get out of New England so that I would have the space that I needed to do the work that I felt
Yeah,
like I needed to
yeah.
do. I didn't want to be known by anyone.
Mm. Mhm.
Ironically,
Mhm.
um, I I absolutely was known
Oh.
by many while I was there, and
Mhm.
my relationship with the Lord got realigned, and I left with my heart wide open, loving all of the women, and maintaining and to this day connecting with some of the women who are on staff and who participate. God really said to me, not in an audible way, but in a still and quiet moment, Barrie, I want you to be present, to sit in my presence, to not distract, and don't be distracted. And
Wow.
I held on to that as an anchor, which really was very settling because I'm a 7 on the Enneagram. I'm all about shitting. Ooh, meant to say, meant to say, kind of shooting the breeze and being silly and having fun and entertaining.
They will not be
Uh,
editing that out.
that's fine. That's who I am. But
I'm
um,
here for it.
yes, it was a challenge, but I also recognize that a lot of how I hide
Hmm.
my hurt and my true self is through humor. And it's not always inappropriate. Certainly, it looks less inappropriate in the last year and a half. But, um, and I had a lot of fun, and there were some moments where my true colors came forward, and we had some really solid laughs. And uh, but the intimacy of connecting with uh, my own pain and witnessing other people work through their pain.
Hmm.
And my husband refers to the Crucible as when you attend a weekend, you get a front seat at the God show. And
Yeah.
I love that expression. And you don't always know that God's the one doing the work until different points
Hmm.
throughout the weekend. But boy, in the end, you can't give credit to anyone but Him. And
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, and I witnessed that, on the weekend, but the two times that I've staffed have left only feeling that and seeing that more
Hmm.
deeply.
That's so cool. And I love that little piece that you said that, God kind of stapled in there for you of to be
Mm,
present, to be
yes.
present with God as well. To not distract and to not be distracting or distracted.
Did.
I think
Yeah.
that's really
Yeah.
good and powerful, and it might not be as powerful for others as it is even for myself hearing it, because I too am an Enneagram 7 and can often cope by being funny, being silly, all of those pieces.
Sure.
But to get to be present
Yeah.
in your own emotional stuff
Sure.
doesn't always feel good as well. So I think
No.
it's something that's
No. Yeah.
easy to run from. So as you look at your own sevenness, your own
That's right.
ways of operating, like what did that look like for you? Were you just wanting to like run away from the feelings or
While
stay
I was
with
while I
them?
was on the weekend,
Mm-hmm.
I tell you, God prepared my heart. I was locked and loaded. I
Yeah.
honestly at times didn't recognize myself
Wow.
because of how I was there to work my tail off and to go deep and to feel anything and everything and to experience, I guess, in a healthy way, the FOMO, the fear of missing out. I didn't want to miss out on what God had for me while I was there, and I knew that there were going to be golden nuggets. And I wasn't there to sabotage. And that's one of my shadows, is I could keep that in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
I was there to move forward and get stronger and healthier.
Yeah.
So, and I respected the other people who were there, which sometimes doesn't come, it's not intentionally disrespectful, but being a distraction or being
Yeah.
silly or throwing comments, sometimes my Tourette's kicks in and God knows what I'm going to say. I still struggle with it. You could even get an update from this recent weekend. But I respected the process,
Good. And so since the weekend, since
Yeah.
you are aware of those pieces and present with them, how do you get in touch with your feelings even now as a 7? Like, what does that look like for you?
Sure. I think where some of those deeper, intense emotions of sadness and grief,
Mm-hmm.
they came out of hiding. They were unearthed, and I became more in touch and familiar. And I would say I carry them with me. I know that on a daily basis, there are pockets of emotions where I'm experiencing sadness or anger or hurt or resentment or jealousy or bitterness. When that pokes up, I really try and honor the emotion,
Mm-hmm.
and which doesn't mean anything, extravagant, but um, I'm not so quick to bat it down or
Mm-hmm.
to swat it away. I can pause for a moment and say, okay, what's going on? Yeah, I'm feeling sad. Or why was I just impatient with my comment toward my husband? Or
Mm-hmm.
why did I, just judge a person who I don't even know? What's that all
Yeah.
about? And how does it show up in my life? That's a big phrase that is a
Yeah.
takeaway that's more emboldened in me, is how are my judgments about others, how are they true for me, and how do they show
Mm-hmm.
up? And it creates
Mm-hmm.
compassion for them as well as myself. And
Definitely.
I would say that I'm feeling less irritated by or annoyed
Mm-hmm.
um, by people, especially those who are closest to me, because I just have a different
Yeah.
framework of looking at it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
That's
And
so powerful.
yeah, and I want to love
I
better.
Man, I also can relate to that in my own crucible journey and so much of my judgments. I did not think I was a judgmental person, but
Yeah.
hot dang. Like I can sit there and just throw the judgments, but as you said, the reality is
Yeah.
it's sitting there looking and
Yeah.
going, "Oh, what's true about me here?" And it's
Yeah.
often the loud people I'm judging, like just super out there with their comments, and then I have to sit there and go, "Oh,
Yeah.
okay."
Sure.
There's something true in me there too. So, yeah, that is a big deal. So, definitely lots of good growth points in being able to both be in touch with our own emotions, but then also realize what
Yeah.
we're doing in relationship with others.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, how has Crucible impacted your relationship with others since the weekend?
My heart and mind are more open and
Mm,
flexible. And I guess what I mean by that is I see people in a
mhm,
different way. Um, when pride's kicking in, I would have said in the past, like, oh, I see you and I hear you, and I'm
mhm.
sensitive to, my perception of who you might be, which has got to be true.
Mhm,
But I would say in the last year and a half, I have been seeing a person for the essence of who they are,
mm.
not related to the outward appearance or even the words or the thoughts that come out of their mouth, but more of having a compassionate, just a sensitivity to what might be going on for them that has perhaps set them up to protect themselves in the way that I'm judging, per se.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It is interesting. We don't realize how much people are actually protecting
Mm,
um, and trying to keep something safe that's inside of them
yes.
or, safe from others. So, how has this experience with Crucible impacted your work, even as a therapist?
Sure. One huge way is that as a therapist in private practice, it's really
Mm-hmm.
easy to work in isolation. and to just go to work and do the job, and to forget that you have supports. And professionally and personally in the job, I feel that I am much more available and attuned to the relationship. And on a bigger picture, Crucible has created a lot of opportunities to support some of the folks that I've worked with who have been a part of some of the groups and have been brave enough to step into a weekend. And I just know that all of the work is going to further jumpstart my current peeps as they step into future work. And in many ways, I think the Crucible Weekend is better than 3 or 4 sessions with me or any other therapist. So I feel supported. They got to witness like what it's like to be in healthy connection with other women, and just a huge blessing.
Definitely. And a huge part of what I love about even what you're doing is sharing the goodness, right? Because I think we could go, oh, well, I want it to be only counseling, like supporting your business, or only Crucible or only church. But where we're able to tie in all of these circles together is such a powerful thing, looking at each piece as the tool that they are. So what is it about Crucible that makes you want to send your clients to the weekends, like to the experiences?
There's not a minute that is wasted. And if a person is willing to go on the weekend and really dive in, there's just great opportunities for them to be seen and known, and to not just be focused on who they are, but to witness others who are walking perhaps in a similar or maybe a very different path. But pain is familiar to us all, and trauma is, and so many of my folks, probably every living person here in the world, they have trauma. But some of the folks that I'm working with, they can get caught up in believing that they're in this alone, and not be mindful of the fact that others have a similar journey. And so that connectedness and the sisterhood relationship that forms as a result of spending time with other women who are on the journey. And it's not an event, it's a process, it's a lifestyle. And that's what it has promoted. And that's what it has stirred for me, is that till the Lord takes me, I want to continue to be on this journey.
I love that so much. And because this mental health work is important. This being able to process our own stuff is important. But like you said, a huge gift in Crucible is not being isolated in it, is not because yes, it's your own story, but as you said, everyone has a story. So many people have trauma, and to be able to connect with others in a way of like, hey, you're in the struggle, me too. Like, let's walk this out together.
Right.
Is beautiful and powerful. Wow.
And one just added thought is, Crucible is like it's a huge toolbox, and you may not leave there using every tool, but you leave there aware of what tools are available to assist you in living a life that's full of health and balance. And if you forget how to use them, there's support. You can reach out to another sister. You can continue the work, staff a weekend, get further training, that sort of
Definitely. And I love that, like you said, like realizing that you're not alone in it. A phrase that often gets brought up in Crucible, one person's work is another's, right? And so as one person's doing their work, doing their own processing, I'm sitting there doing my work going, oh, okay, that's the way I deal with that. Or this is the way that has become so normal for me. So it's like breaking those normal pieces. And as you said too, the toolbox is such a huge gift. And also, I feel even just getting to realize that these pieces are present in us.
Mm.
So, for example, like for myself before, I would have said, like, oh, well, I'm not angry. But realizing my anger would often just be coming out sideways as sadness because I wouldn't let anger be present.
Mm.
And that was for the sake of not hurting others in the way that I was hurt.
Yeah.
And so when I was able to let anger be the gift it was and look at it as, oh, wait, no, sometimes there's righteous anger.
Mm.
And
Sure.
that is a good tool that can be used,
Yes.
opened up this whole new like realm of
Yes.
possibilities of, whoa, okay, yeah, no, these
Yeah.
pieces are present. So
Yeah. Absolutely.
what does it look like in counseling, in therapy, to be able to come in since the start of the pandemic? I'm sure it's had to be wild. But a lot of what is kind of taboo and seems odd right now is people aren't so sure if it's an increase in mental health issues since the start of the pandemic or if it's an increase in mental health awareness. So,
Sure.
what would
That's,
you say is going on there if
yeah.
you
I
could
mean,
kind of pinpoint some of that?
I know I shouldn't play it safe, but I'm gonna. I would
Okay.
say that it's probably a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I think with isolation, which
Mm-hmm.
certainly got exacerbated as a result of the pandemic, people's true colors sort of behind the scenes can sort of begin to rear their ugly heads. And
Mm-hmm.
without the necessary supports in place, I think people do unravel. And I also think it's also been a time where families or individuals have had to, in some ways, come face to face with what their struggles might be, whether it's a form of an addiction, anything, ranging from substance use to pornography to gambling,
Mm-hmm.
um, QVC. I'm dating
Mm-hmm.
myself. That's an old one. But online shopping,
Uh-huh.
just as a way to self-medicate. And I
Yeah.
think at some point, it does catch up to you.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, within my practice, um, I would say in the last 6 months, I have seen and perhaps been a bit more respectful of the impact and the effects of
Mm-hmm.
what COVID and the pandemic has had on people. Again, as a
Mm-hmm.
7, I am really good at reframing. I can find the positive in a litter box.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I can find something there to recycle. It's fertile ground. That's sort of where I go. But um, the younger kids, the 12 and under, even the adolescents, but the 12 and under, with
Mm-hmm.
just an uptick in anxiety and depression and difficulty, with feeling socialized,
Mm-hmm.
feeling connected. I think that the pandemic in and of itself also added to um, that exposure,
Mm-hmm.
and more families, I think, have been perhaps forced to take a look at that. Maybe not always professionally, but in house.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah, and I think as you said that isolation breeds a lot and reveals a lot. And so what would you say to a person who is finding these things in themselves, has some of these pieces being revealed? What would your encouragement be to them?
Sure. Well, I think my encouragement would be to build them up in their willingness to be brave and
Mm,
to bring forward and to expose whatever the issue or pattern is. And then at some point we would look at, how does it serve you, and
yeah.
what does it cost you to continue in that behavior or attitude, and what's at risk, what gets in the way. and
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of those tools that I just mentioned, that technique per se, have been more fine-tuned as a result of me being a part of the
Mm-hmm.
Crucible community.
Yeah, that's so good. As I'm even hearing those going, oh yeah, I'm aware of that. Okay. Because yeah, I feel like even just exposure is a huge piece of it, of being able
Sure.
to say,
Well, and it
oh,
reduces the shame, and to have somebody be able to
yeah.
sit and to have that safe container with the client or a family, and
Hmm.
for them to know that all of who they are is welcome.
Yeah, but I think, man, I love that you brought up shame, because I think shame is such a powerful,
Mm,
powerful, powerful tool of the
yes.
enemy. Um, Satan loves it.
Mm,
I often think back to the verse of John 10:10 where it says, "The thief comes to steal and kill and destroy."
destroy.
And he doesn't do that popped out like the boogeyman. Like he's not like, "Ha,
Yeah.
gotcha, you done." But he does it by stealing our joy,
Yes.
by killing any relationships, by keeping us in shame,
Yeah.
and yeah, like destroying our
Right.
self-image and saying that if we let others see any part of who we are, then we're going to get rejected, we're going to not be seen,
Mm,
not be loved.
mm,
And yeah, man, shame is such a
mm.
powerful
It
tool.
is.
And it's a very isolating one too.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
what would you say to the person who is wrestling with shame? Like, what is one powerful way that you can break shame?
Sure. I think by creating an environment, whether that's a relationship or a community of people who are willing to sit with a person in their process. And there are some
Mm,
people who can name it and claim it and just feel better,
mm-hmm,
and then they
mm-hmm,
have to work through, where does that shame come from? What are some of the messages that they might have experienced or heard when they were, at a younger age, or how do they perpetuate that? I think
mm-hmm,
of a mushroom. If
mm-hmm.
a mushroom grows in the dark, and if we keep it hidden, it's going to continue to reproduce itself and become more potent and infect, our entire being, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But if in Christ, if you shine light on it, you bring it out of the darkness and into the light. Um, God's got His hands wide open and wants us to bring our very core of whatever it is that is shameful, whatever the behavior is, um, and he wants to reshape that. He wants to remind us that you know we are not to believe, like he doesn't want us to believe that our misshapen identity is truth. There's something
Yeah,
better for us,
definitely.
and yeah, so talking about it and
Mm-hmm,
caring for them and encouraging. And I know for me, um, there was a season in my life, and probably in my college years, where I was right out of college in between graduate work. I did a stint of counseling,
mm-hmm.
and I had tremendous sadness and felt tremendous shame. And I was in a chair, it was a swivel chair. And whenever I felt the sadness kick in and my face get red, I would, turn the chair around. So the whole chair was back to the therapist. And it was only
Okay.
then and there, that I allowed myself to express my feelings of sadness with
Wow.
another person. And then it was probably 6 months later before I was able to turn that chair around and let the
Mm.
therapist see that. And the shame wasn't around anything per se in particular that I can recall, but it was around sharing my emotions and really being seen.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, it looks a lot different now. I'm not saying I don't have, little hiccups now and then, but um, I can remember feeling a lot of shame, but I don't believe I walk in shame anywhere
Yeah.
near as much as I used to. So
Wow.
bringing it out into the light and feel it.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, that light exposure is so huge.
Mm,
And I think a lot of what you said about being in community, whether that's solely with a therapist, whether that is bringing it to a trusted friend or a church family member, like there is
mm,
power in being able to
yeah,
get real and vulnerable. And it's risky. Like there's a lot at risk there.
sure. And people don't
100%.
always respond in the way that we hope, and
Right.
that's their work. But our
Mm-hmm.
work is to still step out and be true and to claim that this is my mess, and yeah, it's stinky and smelly, but I believe he's gonna recycle it, and
Yeah.
something awesome and beautiful and lovely is going to come from it. And I still am beautiful and lovely in the midst of it. If that makes some sense.
Oh, 100%, 100%. Well, I think a huge part of the beauty of sharing what is either shameful or once was shameful is it untangles those lies from the truth. Because when all of those come and take place, take root in our minds, they become entangled with the truth.
Yes.
So the truth gets tainted by this lie.
Sure.
And so a huge part of that is getting to tear those pieces apart and go, okay, what's actually here? What's actually true?
Yeah.
And so I can even, share from my own life. Recently, I was asked by a friend, like, hey, do you still carry shame in this area, in a specific thing that has happened in my life? And I was like, no, which is so odd, because a few years ago, I would not talk to anyone about the situation for the fact that it had a ton of shame around it. But as I realized, wow, yeah, the shame was released from sharing my story in safe places. It got easier to share that story in safe places.
Yes.
And as I sat there and realized, oh, whoa, this isn't as taboo as I thought it was. Like, this person has something similar, and this person has something similar. And myself sharing my story in a safe place made it so someone else could share their story in a safe place and go, oh, why am I carrying shame in this?
Sure.
So releasing our own shame actually frees others to release their shame too.
That's beautiful. Yes.
Yeah. So cool. Yeah. So cool. But I just love the image of young Barrie sitting in her counselor's office with her chair turned to her counselor. But I think that it's such a beautiful picture of courage, because that courage is being afraid and doing it anyways.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And sometimes it's taking that first step of, man, I don't want to be here, but I'll sit in this chair and I won't look at you yet, but I'm going to share something.
Yes. And having some awareness of deep down inside, I so deeply want and need to be seen fully and to be received and cared for and loved, and to trust that could happen.
Yeah, and that's huge.
Yes. And by God's grace, I've had a handful of people stand in the gap and create that safe relationship for me to practice becoming more and more.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I mean, what a gift for those people to stand in the gap with you, but also what a gift for you to invite them into that space. Yeah, because we're not going to be seen if we don't allow ourselves to be seen, which is such a crappy thing, man.
It is. And how do we expect to?
Easier.
How can we care for other people or love people if we're not willing to walk out into it?
Yeah,
and be seen.
Definitely.
And to tolerate it.
It's very two-sided, unfortunately. Oh, how much easier it would be if we could just receive it and not have to, give anything to, but it's both. And how has the connection for you worked of both being a Christian as well as a counselor, and what does that tie together look like for you?
Certainly being a Christian, there's so much freedom because of who Christ is, and where my identity is found in him. It frees me up to not have to be, the counselor. Yes, by profession, I'm called the counselor, but the ultimate counselor is him. And I'm able, because of some of the soul work that I am doing and will plan to continue to do, I'm more freed up to embrace the good, the bad, and the ugly of who I am, which by his grace, right or wrong, I don't hide that within my experience with the folks that I work with.
And even just, recently, I feel like in Christian circles, it's become more acceptable to talk about mental health issues, talk about struggles that are there. And so oftentimes especially mental health can be such a taboo subject in Christian circles of, oh, well, the Bible says be anxious for nothing. So
Sure.
why are you sitting there anxious? Or,
Yeah.
we're supposed to be joyful always. So
Mm,
why are you depressed? Like, come
sure.
on, just pray it away.
Yeah.
So if you had a person, a Christian that's sitting there thinking like, I want to do this, but is it Christ-like? Like, what do you say to that
To do the
person?
crucible,
A
or
crucible or counseling
to
or,
do
any of
counseling.
those pieces.
Sure. Well, um, we are made to be in communion. We are made to
Mm,
have fellowship with one another, and
mm-hmm.
um, that living in isolation is not a way in which we are encouraged to live.
Mm-hmm.
There might be some blessing in the very short term, but long term, we're going to atrophy. And so, um, I might perhaps gently challenge a person to look at, what would it look like if you were to give yourself permission to maybe consider that you have some anxiety and that
Yeah.
you don't always feel joyous, and you can perhaps have both.
Mm-hmm.
I can have the joy in the Lord in me, and it might be sleeping for a few hours or a few days.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
still there. It's not alive and in front of me, while I'm also walking through disappointment or hurt or
Mm-hmm.
anger. And the emotions in and of themselves are not sinful. They're
Yeah.
God-given emotions to be experienced and to be expressed
Mm,
and to be identified and worked through. It's the real work is, how do we dig deep and address those underlying thoughts and feelings without being careless toward ourselves,
mm-hmm.
engaging in self-harm or hurting other people.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
No, I think that is so good and so needed for so many to hear that their emotions are God given. I think emotions can heap up so much shame and so much embarrassment of like,
yeah,
wow, well, what the heck? Like, I'm a Christian, I'm supposed to be joy filled. But
sure.
as you said, like maybe that joy is sleeping for a few hours and disappointment's online, and that's okay.
Yes, and joy comes in the morning, and every
Yeah.
day He gives us new mercies, and we
Mm-hmm.
can begin again. And we can also choose to begin again 10 minutes from the experience we're in. We can begin again and
Mm-hmm.
learn how to live and walk with our emotions. They're not meant to be thrown into shadow or into our backpack.
Yeah, that's good. And so, speaking of shadow, I'm curious in all of your own personal work, so bringing it off of your job and what that looks
Yeah,
like, is there any shadow pieces that you discovered about yourself in your crucible work?
I would say that I'm still learning. The term shadow is somewhat of a new
Mm-hmm.
terminology
Mm-hmm.
to me. When I boil it down to, what are the parts of me that I hide, repress,
Mm-hmm.
or deny?
Mm-hmm.
Um, how do I self-protect? I
Yeah.
can think about it in that way. Um, I know that I have struggled with all types of insecurities, fearing that I would not be accepted, that um, people would see me even as a therapist and wonder how on earth she was able to pull that off, because of, the story that I tell myself about who I
Mm-hmm.
am and who I'm not. And so occasionally that can kick in. Um, Certainly struggle with pride at times. I can be a lone
Mm-hmm.
ranger. I can make some assumptions that I'm clear on how something is supposed to look, and unbeknownst to me, I've stepped on somebody's soul or heart,
Mm-hmm.
and of course feel sadness once I have that awareness. But I've got plenty of blind spots as
Yeah.
as well. So I think as soon as you understand one, God sort of slides in another um, shadow for you to begin taking a peek at. And I
Oh,
think
definitely.
just remaining open and not seeing it as an opportunity to go back into shame, but I
Mm-hmm.
recognize this about me.
Yeah, yeah. To look at,
And
man, here's why I'm
yeah,
doing some of what I'm doing.
yes,
I'm trying to put this on because there's actually a really big insecurity there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a real piece. And
Yeah.
so, a lot of what we look at in Crucible is those shadow parts, those pieces that we hide and repress and deny. But another sweet side is we get to look at our gold too.
Yes.
So, what
Yes.
gold did you discover about yourself through Crucible?
Yeah. Without it sounding cliche, that I am enough, that the best that I have to offer, any situation or relationship at any given point in time, it's enough. And that I think I have a really fun sense of humor.
Oh,
And
yes.
I am joyful. And though all of that can be part of my shadow at times, there's real genuine truth to that. And for me to not feel like I have to hide behind it, but to embrace it. And so part of the goal might be, I think I'm developing a capacity to discern when I'm hiding and when there's just plain legitimate gold in front of me, if that makes sense. If it doesn't, you can make sense later on for me.
No, I can get that, especially because, look at it, you was like looking at a mirror for myself. So I operate in really a lot hard. Of the same ways. It's fabulous.
It is. Okay, I got a few more rings than you.
Oh man, but yeah, because especially like those gold pieces are so real in you, but when we allow them to be the shadow, we're ridding them of the gold that they actually are. And so it's said about our emotions that when we cap one emotion, we're actually capping all the rest of them. So when we shove down sadness, shove down anger, we're capping it, then only allowing happiness, joy, to reach that certain level as well. And so when we do that with our gold, we're capping that and not letting it be the gift that it is, trying to minimize the shadow. But when we can go, oh, shoot, there's this shadow piece here, and I'm going to look at it for what it is and look at, that shadow as the insecure little girl she is and give her some love, then I can genuinely allow my gold to be my gold and go, oh, wow. Yeah, no, that joy-filled happy part's a really good part. Right.
Yes.
Yeah. And so to see that girl then and set her free is pretty powerful. Yeah. So Barrie, what would you say to the person who is thinking about going on a Crucible weekend and is not sure about it?
Lovingly, I would say, you go, girl. Go on a Crucible weekend. I would encourage them to take a look at their current life and is the way in which they're living, is it reaping the fruit and the benefits that they want? And today I encourage somebody to consider going on a weekend. And it was much more natural than how I just said it, but
you go, girl.
I would be leading with my heart, and I would have no problem big picture saying, here's how it has benefited me. Here's how it's benefited friends and other sisters and brothers in the Lord. Here's how it's benefited my husband individually, but us together as a couple. And the benefits trickle down into how we care for our adult children right now. And I know the Crucible bug has been planted in their hearts, and I would not be surprised if sometime, in this next 5 or 6 years that the kids would go. I would invite them to be open to being so surprised by the love that they will experience.
Love that. Well, Barrie, it has been a treat. I'm excited for the folks who are going to listen. So we will see y'all next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jess. You're the bomb.
For more information about our weekends, please go to thecrucibleproject.org. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Rate and review wherever you are listening and subscribe on your preferred podcast platform. Also, don't forget to check out myjourney2.com for your free 2-week trial. That's myjourneyto.com. Thank you for listening.